That's when you say your line, Jacob.
Being Spider-Man is hard work. All that power, all that responsibility, all that time on set squeezing in and out of those suits and hanging in the air. Oof. And of course, the harder something is, the easier it is to goof up. Let's take a look at some of the greatest bloopers and blown takes from 20 years of Spider-Man films. In a recent interview, Tom Holland talked about how much harder it was to shoot the stunt-heavy Uncharted, instead of his action being mostly green-screened in the Marvel films. But like we said, being Spider-Man is a ton of physical work, even in the age of super realistic CGI. So let's look at him getting swung around and taking tumbles in that iconic suit.
You really like the suit, right?
I do, yes. Because I can go to the bathroom in it, mainly.
In the 2004 Spider-Man 2, director Sam Raimi, always in love with physical effects, chose to make Doc Ock's tentacles large, practical puppets that swung around the actor, interacting with him and picking up and manipulating objects. Even the most precise puppets can be hard to finesse though, as seen in these botched takes, where they were supposed to bring a glass to actor Alfred Molina's lips and let him take a sip.
I'm driving.
I think we all know by now not to mess with Samuel L. Jackson. He's been bringing his distinct, menacing aura to movies and credit card commercials for almost 50 years, and has a well-earned reputation as a real pro who always hits his mark and knows his lines. We think that has earned him the right to not have his lines stepped on by anyone or anything, as Tom Holland learned here when he snapped a prop shut during a take on Spider-Man Far From Home.
We're almost there. Shut the thing on my line.
These days, Sam Raimi is probably best known as the writer and director of the original Spider-Man trilogy, and as the director of the upcoming Doctor Strange sequel. But his origins as a scrappy director of the indie horror Evil Dead films still show through in his love for getting hands-on during shooting. Like in this shot from the original Spider-Man, where he made sure that he was the one to really nail Peter Parker in the head with a heavy backpack. While we're on the topic of Sam Raimi, it would be a shame if we didn't show off just how much glee he takes in tormenting his cast and crew, even getting his producers involved in elaborate stunt pieces. In these shots from Spider-Man 3, where Sandman is ripping off an armored car, the guard is played by producer Grant Curtis, who stuck it out like a champ, even as the director buried him in tons of sand over and over again.
It's exciting.
Finally, let's close out our own Raimi trilogy of bloopers with this bit of test footage where he delivers a touch of familial abuse on his little brother Ted.
Here's a pre-frame for you.
Yes, as close as I can stomach.
Truly, nobody can burn you or annoy you like family, even on a big budget film set. Wow, Sam. Harsh. Ah, pigeons, the majestic, plentiful trash birds of urban centers the whole world over. Did you know that pigeons produce a kind of thin, cheese-like substance in their throats that they use to feed their young? If you didn't, well, we're profoundly sorry. It's very possible that Zendaya knows all sorts of horrible pigeon facts, though. It would certainly explain her kind of freaking out while she was being covered in pigeons on the set of Spider-Man Far From Home.
Whoa! There's so many!
Being an actor can be pretty tough. All those lines, all those takes, the bright lights of the set. And sometimes you're John Paxton, who didn't start acting until he was 70. The father of actor Bill Paxton, John, started working with Sam Raimi on 1998's A Simple Plan, and landed himself a plum role as Osborn's personal valet in the Spider-Man trilogy. Unfortunately, the poor guy also had to deliver this clunker of a line in Spider-Man 3, which he couldn't seem to get out no matter what angle they shot him from.
Came from his gilder.
Okay, his glider, that's right.
Or where he had been placed on the set.
The blade that pierced his body came from his trailer.
We can't blame him any. We'd probably blow that line too. Tony Revolori's version of Flash Thompson has been a refreshing take on Spider-Man's traditional high school foil, giving him a little pathos and plenty of privilege without having to turn the character into a cruel meathead. He's a great presence so far in the Homecoming trilogy with his weirdly charmed life, but one thing that didn't come easily to him is this line reading in Far From Home.
How much blood did you donate to what is it?
Where he's pestering Peter Parker about just how much blood the poor kid had to sell to get on the class's European trip. Gather round and hear a tale of the old internet, when posting this picture of Tobey Maguire was comedy gold. It seems almost like an impossible image, with Maguire somehow making his mouth tiny while turning it into a deep V-shaped smile. To be honest, we always thought it was Photoshop wizardry. But then we watched the blooper reel for Spider-Man 3 and discovered that, wow, he actually made that face. Tobey Maguire has a way more elastic face than we thought. We kind of can't turn away. For almost 40 years, Greek fashion designer John Varvatos has helped men look like they're on their way to a very expensive rock concert for a band you've never even heard of. Honestly, it's kind of a Tony Stark look. So imagine our surprise when we were watching the bloopers for Far From Home and saw this take that could have completely changed how we saw the film's villain, Mysterio.
I had a sick closet full of mostly John Varvatos.
Now we can't stop imagining an alternate reality where Quentin Beck rocks the styles of the architect of all his pain. There's no sense in mourning what might have been, but maybe in No Way Home? For the first and third entry in the Raimi trilogy of Spider-Man films, there was nothing like watching Willem Dafoe embody Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin. He's a compelling screen presence to begin with, but he threw himself into the role of Osborn with entrancing gusto. Imagine our surprise when we learned that the guy only loved doing two things on blown takes: making weird noises in his Green Goblin voice and doing menacing voguing. There's not a whole lot to say about this one, other than that Tom Holland and Jake Gyllenhaal seem like really fun guys who can't quite figure out how shaking hands works.
I don't think the shot works.
It can't be that hard, right? We're not sure. We've been social distancing for a while. Shaking hands fills us at least a little bit with dread now.
Maybe we don't shake hands, we just do this. Thank you.
Okay, so we may have already covered the puppet-assisted comedy of Alfred Molina as Otto Octavius, but this one is just too good to leave out. During his starring heel turn in Spider-Man 2, Molina was also in preparations to lead a stage production of Fiddler on the Roof. Taking the lead in a major musical is daunting work, so the actor would occasionally practice between takes for the cast and crew. Thankfully, the puppeteers were also ready to get involved, giving us this gem where Doctor Octopus himself does a bit of "If I Were a Rich Man."
If I were a rich man, yaga-digga-digga-dig.
The Homecoming universe of Spider films has seen some major changes for the character and how he is presented. For one thing, we never get a death scene for Uncle Ben. And for another, the films don't have the same obsession with Peter Parker's parents as the Amazing Spider-Man films did. At least, not in any of the takes they used. It turns out that Tom Holland has a habit of breaking character and saying the quiet parts of his take on Spider-Man's past very loud.
My parents are dead.
Well, this has been plenty of fun, but now to take us out, how about we celebrate 20 years of Spider-Man actors sneezing in the middle of takes? Gesundheit, everyone. We know those are hard to keep in.
I'm so sorry, dude.
And there you have it. Mayhem, mishaps, and plenty of falling over and flubbed lines. What are some of your favorite Spider bloopers? Sound off in the comments, and thanks for hanging out with us here on The Things.